Yes,
Ma'am.
we are.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's a little after 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. It is 1st of July, so um, we're well into the year. The year seems to be flying by. Uh, on Monday, we spoke, Pastor did a lesson on John 17, the first three verses as far as we got, but I think uh, this is probably one of the most enlightening and powerful lessons and important lessons we've had in a while. So uh, I'm anxious to get back into this a little bit today. But first, let's see if we have any questions on anything else. I know a lot is going on this week. So any questions on anything, anyone?
Right. I have a question.
Okay.
What is the communism? I think it's communism. What is that?
Are you saying communism?
Yes, yes. I'm thinking I'm phrasing it right.
Okay. Communism, guys.
Hey, this
Oh,
is, yeah,
go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
no, you're good. Communism is well, it is basically just a theory about how you should organize politically and socially a society. And it has had various incarnations across the world over the last, formerly known as communism or referred to as communism over the last 100 years or so, a little bit more. But it is a political and social philosophy, essentially.
The reason I asked that question, it was because I was seeing some stuff where China, they are a communism country, and Russia is a communism country. And somehow, I be thinking that right there, trying to get that whole world order thing organized, and communism is the only thing I could think of.
Nick, I like what you said, just a theory, because it is. It does not exist in reality. Because if you think about what communism is supposed to do, it is supposed to it speaks to common ownership of everything, including production and distribution of goods. Everyone is taken care of under the theory of communism. And if you look at China or Russia, you don't see a commonality in ownership or production. You see everything centered in the hands of a few, no differently than it is in this country. So just like capitalism is a theory, so is communism. Neither one of them lives up to what they are defined to be. So when you start talking about a world order, the world order is actually oligarchy, a handful of rich people controlling everything. But the labels are different, but the actions are the same. You agree to that, Nick?
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I would say also that New World Order idea begins to dip into conspiracy territory. Not that we shouldn't go there, but I mean to point out that there's quite a lot of confusion and a lot of conflicting information that you will find if you are interested in learning about those kinds of things. Also, it is potentially not even relevant to what we are discussing, depending on what it is we're discussing, because the underlying spiritual principles and the underlying concepts that we deal with apply regardless of the particular political or social organization of a particular society. Now, I would say that the New World Order, quote unquote, that you would most likely hear MAGA Republicans talking about is not exactly how that exists in real life, though I do think there is something like that, or an attempt to put together something like that that is very real, if not more loosely defined and more loosely sort of spread across different nations and groups of people. But overall, that idea has to do with the, as Pastor Richard said, creating essentially an oligarchic rulership class that has no ties to any particular country or nation. So it essentially can exert its authoritarian influence over sort of every group of people on the planet without having to be legally bound by anything. And there's, I think, a lot more to that, but I think that's a basic breakdown of that concept as it currently exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Pastor. Charles, are you okay? Does that answer your question, Charles?
Yes, that answers the question.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the question. If you will, I have a quick question. I don't know how quick it'll be. A lot happened this week. I saw where homelessness is on the rise again, and we talk enough about violence, and a lot of things we talk about. We just put them on the surface, so it'd be something that on the surface, so it'd be something that we share and we help us to see where we are in the world, not to give you anything to worry about or be concerned with, because hopefully we see and understand by now who we are and what these things are. But the thing that happened that with the Supreme Court and affirmative action, what are your views on that? Where do you see that in the spiritual world? So kind of lay that out for us, anyone.
What are you talking about? You talking about what Supreme Court things that came down last week?
Well, it came down this week, wasn't it? It's the affirmative action decision with enrolling in colleges, enrollment.
Yeah, I believe that all of those things had to take place in order for the concepts that has compromised the freedom of men to be noticed at a deeper place. When all of this happened, people began to ask, what's happening next, or are we going backwards? Regardless of how they raise those questions about it, what it actually does is open them up for something different, for a better way. And when that door to their hearts is open, then we who are teaching enlightenment begin to put place stuff in the macro, and that begins to go into those doorways that are open in their hearts. And it gives them opportunity to take a pause and consider a different route than what they have currently been traveling. There are so many people who have embraced the idea that things are much better than what they were, and they're beginning to see differently now. If this is one thing happening every 2 or 3 weeks, we wouldn't pay it any attention. We mean it as a society, because we don't focus on anything very long, any one particular thing. What happened is that the decisions that were handed down touched every aspect of society. The abortion question has been there, and it's not going any place. Then you have the policies that have been handed down that actually criminalizes homosexuality and also really restricts the upward movement of people of color in particular. And one of the things that I noticed more striking about it is that Clarence Thomas, who is a recipient of what affirmative action can do, he represents that. But he hates himself so much until he fights against himself. And this is in itself causes people to ask themselves questions like, why would he do this? And this is another way of opening yourself up to the answers, to the whys. The why is not why Clarence Thomas did what he did, because nobody knows except him, even if he does. However, the broader picture is that the things that we are to bring change to is not based upon white and black people. It's based upon European concepts that people have bought into, including Asian people. I am honestly, let me just say it, Asians are just as racist as white folks when it comes to black folks. And if they were not, then the lawsuit would not have been simply against affirmative action. It would also been against legacy as well. Asians want to be white so bad until they would throw anybody under the bus in order for them to get accepted into the club of Europeans, not understanding that regardless of how much they want to be accepted, they're still people of color, and they are not. They're just a pawn in a game that's being played against people who are darker than they are. So this whole thing actually is an effort to expand in a very, very open way the tentacles of white supremacy in the same way that the guy in Hungary, the way he's doing it. Just open like it was, a few years ago. Now, do I think it's going to be successful? No, I don't. Because we are doing what we do for the express purpose of righting the wrongs and bringing everyone to a place of rightness. I do also believe that Donald Trump has been chosen by our Creator, not only to expose everything, but also to bring this society to its knees, to destroy it, to knock it off of its foundation so it would have to be rebuilt. And the reconstruction of it will be the reconstruction of a nation the construction of a nation, rather, and the destruction of an empire based on race and violence. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I hope so. That's not a definitive view. That's just how I see things. I'm sure it's someone else.
It was when the decision came down, and you know, I'm looking at CNN and all the news breaks that they had, and you know, it did grab everyone's attention. I guess, however, I didn't feel any kind of way about it personally. I kind of as I'm gaining momentum and seeing us in everything, and seeing that these things must happen, and on the surface, what appears to be negative is not negative at all. So what it all means, I can't explain it, and I guess that's why I was asking you guys for your opinion. But I don't see it as I think as long as we stand firm on who we are, nothing will surprise us what we see as brick by brick comes tumbling down. So
I can add something to that. Just hearing you speak makes me think of the method by which that sort of empire is essentially torn down and the nation is built up. We're in the watching it crumble or watching it being tore down phase of this process, of this transition. And I believe, or rather just feels to me like so much of what we've seen over in the 20th century with civil rights movement, affirmative action, and things like that are put in place on a legal, civil level are being attacked because they are themselves not sort of fundamental to the nation that we currently are. But let me explain. I mean, they're band-aids for the true sort of corrupted nature that exists as the foundation of what we sort of currently call our society. And they're stopgaps in a way. They're attempts to placate or attempts to hold in check, actually, the sort of brutality of white supremacy in a way. They are not sort of a true fundamental recognition of the human rights of everyone that exists within this nation or country. And they're attacking these sort of legal institutions or legal proclamations. But to me, that feels like they are unwittingly creating the catalyst that furthers their own demise. And I mean the demise of the white supremacist attitude, because they want to push things as hard and fast as they can. And I think they're going to do it too quickly and they're not going to do it in the gradual way that they have tried to. They're going to sort of rip the Band-Aid off and that will be too much, I think, for people in general. And the backlash against their own essentially bigotry and racism and brutality is what I think will be the catalyst for the building of, or the refounding of, the psychological and spiritual basis for the nation we should be. So hopefully that makes sense. I think basically I'm saying things like the Civil Rights Act and all sort of legal proclamations that came out of that movement are themselves band-aids. They were not the true fundamental recognition of the human rights that all humanity possesses. And until that is what is foundational, then all the rest of this sort of surface level legal stuff can be attacked. And they are attacking it for their purposes, but their purposes will backfire on them, is what I mean, is what I believe. Thank you.
In addition to what you said, Nick, if we really look at it, everything that has been reversed, or everything that has been said to be a precedent, has been changed. And all of that grew out of the civil rights movement, pretty much. Excuse me, because it is impossible to speak about women's rights or rights for LGBTQ people without looking at what happened during the course of the civil rights movement, because all of those things grew from that umbrella. And now we are seeing how fragile and how temporal they were. And at the same time, we're seeing how strong they are in terms of bringing people's desires to the same place, and that is a desire for change. Thank you.
I have a comment I would like to make. I keep hearing on the news about, and I'm not trying to place fear in anybody, but they keep talking about a storm is coming, and no one would ever say what that storm is. So is that part of what we're talking about as far as things taking place in the universe? And I know they're not talking about the weather. It's something else bigger than that.
The storm is not coming, Evelyn.
It's already here?
We are the storm.
How so?
Oh, yes.
The storm changes everything. It uproots everything. We are the storm. We are uprooting everything.
Yep. We've said before that even the MAGA Republican movement is a confused attempt to refound this nation. But that exact process is happening up under their feet in a way, because it is not, they have no root or foundation in anything. They're confused other than the fact that they recognize that fundamental change needs to take place. They are correct. That change is taking place, but it is more in line with our intentions and sort of aligned thought. Why? Because we are, and we desire to be, connected to that foundational principle and those foundational concepts that must be addressed. Whereas the sort of MAGA confused attempt at recognizing the need to address these foundational things is more chaotic in the political sphere and tied to sort of racism and bigotry in a lot of ways. And those things are fundamentally not stable, and they are not deep. They are not foundational. They are not anchored to source. They're not anchored to the true deep aspect of our collective self that must be addressed. And so that's what I mean. The storm is happening up under their feet, even though they do recognize that that storm, well, they say it's coming, but Pastor Richard is correct. It is already here. The things needed to make this shift are already in place and being strengthened. Thank you.
And I saw a report the other day. I brought up earlier the homelessness is increasing, and the only reason why that gets national attention is because it is face to face with the Caucasians or European. Of course, the overwhelming number of people is minorities, but it is affecting the white race at such an alarming rate. It has gotten everybody's attention. And as you guys talk, that's, that there's nobody here, and I mean here in America, that is not being startled by something out there is not getting your attention. Some part of your foundation is not being shaken. So that too is just a part of all of this, the storm that we talk about, gathering everybody's energy to pay attention to what's going on, and almost like where are we, and what do we do next? So I just want to agree with you, just add that part to it, because I think all of it's from the same energy.
Good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone. This is George in Philly. We experienced a storm this past week here, in our area, and the storm, gave me a vision in terms of just being able to realize how energy impacts on our situation. And as Pastor mentioned, that we are the storm. That evening, that night, the thunder was so powerful, that we've seen lightning where it could be totally pitch black, turn to daylight. But I think what interests me was what was the storm speaking to me spiritually. And I saw, the sea and the waves and just a lot of energy being stirred up in me. And at the same time, the sound was speaking in that way to be aware, to pay attention. And again, sometimes, fear can creep in from a standpoint of cause and division and separation, but I know the storm was speaking to me, and I was just trying to, again, understand what can I draw from that power, what can I draw from that energy, and I think that's why, we have the opportunity to be the light in that way, that we can bring healing and awareness. Now, when you spoke about the shelter and homelessness, this week, I had the opportunity to revisit a place that's dear, to my heart, and the people who were gathered were of all ethnic backgrounds, but we were dealing with the issue of homelessness. And sometimes it may not be on the magnitude of multitude of people, but it could just be that one person who's looking for, a place to reside where he can be open to the truth and be open to knowing oneself. So I think what is being discussed right now has really had significance in my journey this week. And I just wanted to share those thoughts and just see how that might connect when we think about the power of not just water, but the power of energy that is being generated and what is it saying to us. So I just wanted to share those thoughts with everyone. Thank you for letting me share those. Thanks. I'm done.
Birds have nests. What does that go on to say? The Son of Man has no place to lay his head. The human wandering this earth, searching for an authority that will give it a resting place. no longer is the human homeless or wandering. The hour is here. The hour is now. And when Jesus says, glorify thou me, the hour is now that we are to recognize that the promises are fulfilled. And the promises that are fulfilled is the promise of humanity realizing its oneness with its Creator. If we, the storm itself, lift up our eyes and see what's outside, but more importantly, what's inside, our eye shows us the oneness that we are with the universe. Our eye shows us the changes that are present. And it is up to us to release the creation that we have brought into existence. And that creation that we have brought into existence is the energy and the power that is necessary to remove the pillars of a society that is built on sand, to remove the concepts that divides the outside world from the inside, that causes us to see a greater need for what our eyes see than what our eye sees. It's time for us to be who we are, and that is the ones who recognize the current manifestation of spiritual reality and return the whole of this earth to a place of harmony with the universe itself. And that harmony is realized when we are in harmony with ourselves, when we are able to look internally and see the change, not that we are, but the change that we have brought into existence. That's who we are. That's what we do. That is our purpose. And there is nothing greater, more important than to humanity, than those of us who understand that we are fed from the milk of creation, from the breast of our Creator. When we recognize that we are fed, we are nourished from that, then we become the nourishment that brings into manifestation everything that we've talked about in terms of harmony itself. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I speak to what George said?
Of course.
The power that you experienced, that you observed, is actually so minute in relationship to the power that we are, until eventually it will not even be noticed as being as powerful as it appears to be. There is no greater power than we are. There can be no greater power than we are, because all power, all energy emanates from the one who created us, and we are the one who created us. So we are the essence of everything that the universe is, and all the energy that resides within the confines of this universe. The expansion of all of it expands us. Our expansion does not come by how far we can see with our eyes, but how deeply we see with our eye. When we are perched on the mountaintop of the wilderness, we began to see that it is our thoughts that has kept us separated from our Creator. When we look at, when we look around us, rather from our perch, what we actually see is that this earth is not the thing that sustains us at all. When Jesus said, "Man must not live by bread alone," Jesus is saying that the material things that you see are not the sustainers of you. The thing that sustains you is the energy that you are. It is not your body. It is the energy that you are. Your eyes see manifestations of things that are held intact by energy that you project. But you are not held together by the energy that you project. You are held together by the energy that you are. That is your life and your life itself. And that is the reason we talk about life, and we cannot describe what life actually is. Only the closest we can get to it is talking about the energy source as our lives. But when we talk about living life, what are we talking about? There is no description of it, because to define it is to restrict it. And there are no restrictions on the life that we are, the energy that we are. We are continuously on the move towards the place of ripeness, and in order to bring ripeness to the whole of humanity. The kingdoms that we see from our perch are simply not kingdoms in the sense that we know kingdoms to be, but it's talking about all of those things that your mind is telling you that you can rule over. It's about you having dominion over things as opposed to having dominion over the consciousness of this earth. The kingdoms, the gated communities, the great jobs, the 9 cars, all these things are the kingdoms that the mind sees. But the true kingdom is the kingdom of dominion over the consciousness of this earth for the express purpose of bringing a purity of consciousness into the earth, so that all of these philosophies that we talked about earlier can exist no more. They will be morphed into a pure form of thought and a world of harmony that the earth has not known in full, but has experienced in part. Thank you.
I have a comment. So George was talking about how strong the lightning was and the thunder. And apparently, and he said something about paying attention, to get our attention, whatever. So if it had been something lightly or mild, then somebody would have been going about their daily life or whatever. Or if this was at night, they wouldn't have really paid it any attention. So when he said that it was a different type of storming or storm, it got, I'm quite sure, a lot of people's attention. So with that being said, nature is telling us to pay attention, to wake up.
I think it's bigger than that, Evelyn. I think that the fact that it caught George's attention speaks to a deeper thing than just getting our attention and waking up. Because if George got his attention and George needed to be awakened, where has he been all the rest of the time? Where have we been if it takes a storm like that to wake us up? If we know who we are, we're not asleep at all. We are awakened. The way he described it, what I see is how quickly the understanding of wisdom is brought to us. And the lightning is being pitch dark, and the lightning bringing it, causing us to see it as though it's daylight, meaning that with the quickness of the lightning, there comes the understanding, there exists rather, the understanding of wisdom beyond our greatest expectations. I'm hoping I'm clear with that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It does.
And also, if I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Pastor.
No, go
But
ahead.
also, if I may, the next morning, I was, doing some gardening, and my neighbor from across the street came over and said to me, did you, hear or did you experience the lightning? Now, my point was, in terms of just talking to her, she mentioned that her and her children was given thoughts about going into the basement because they just sensed some fear. And I think in speaking with her, it gave us an opportunity to be able to appreciate drawing together, appreciating a relationship as neighbor, because normally I, have not spoke to that person. I mean, just to have a conversation. But I know that, again, the meaning of it drawed us closer to be able to have a desire to want to know each other better. And so in our meditating, Levon and I, about it, it was interesting in terms of her thought to say, there's something about y'all, that makes me feel comfortable to want to connect. And so to make a long story short, again, Evelyn and Pastor and everyone, I know that, again, it was the spirit of who we are that drawed that energy, but it's the light that we need to give out of love and kindness, etc., to bring balance and harmony. So again, I think I just shared a little bit about just the storm, but I think it was much more than what, we looked at it with our natural eyes, if that resonates, Pastor. But I just wanted to share those thoughts with that. I'm done.
It does resonate. It does, because she said they were considering going to the basement out of fear. That was not your consideration. That's a weakness. All you said, in essence, I do believe, that made her comfortable was fear not. This is not something to be afraid of. It's something to embrace. And I think that it resonated with your neighbor at a deeper place than your neighbor realizes. And the fruit of that seed has not even grown to fruition yet. But at the same time, it has altered her vision, all because of what appeared to be a horrific storm, which in essence was a grand opportunity. But not just her and you, but for all of us who are discussing this and extending from us to others. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that we hear today is this term about wokeness. And when we talk about being awake, we generally think about being spiritually awake. But those attitudes and those energies out there that are, I guess, selfish in nature, are even taking the very word of what woke means. Woke, even if you don't think about it spiritually, to be awake means you're not asleep. You're not asleep anymore, etc. But they've taken the very word and tried to make it so evil and negative that we've got to stand. That's why it's important that we stand as we are, because given what's happening with some of those energies, even the very elect will succumb to that kind of
creation, redefining, if you will, of what woke means, and people buying into that nonsense. So it's important that that we maintain, that we stand, and that we, as you say, not only create, but that we also rest too. That we take that internal look to continually be in touch with the divine that we are, so that we can be, if you will, a pillar or an anchor, and continue to put things in the macro that others can attach to, can hold on to, and be rescued by, when they come to the sense that something is just so wrong that, you know, I'm washed off this ship. I'm washed into this ocean of negativity, and I gotta get out of it. I need rescuing. So even the very term wokeness is seen as negative these days, when its very nature, being wakeful, being alert, being spiritually aware, is the opposite of what they're trying to say woke is.
Thank you.
Always, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't know it. Go ahead, Pastor. Sorry about that.
No, I simply go say that's always been the thing, projection. If you look at the history of the projection of the racism, what you will see is that all those things that are beneficial are those things that have been used, have been rendered rather something negative in order to keep us from focusing on it or paying attention to it or embracing it. And that with spiritual things, being awoke, as well as with the watermelon thing. the major crop that enriched Africans after slavery, after the enslavement, was the sale of watermelon. Until Caucasians began to print pictures in newspapers or caricatures of thick lip watermelon, people eating watermelon, spitting seeds and juice all over, dripping from all over their face, and it became something negative. Or even the little jockey who sat in front of the safe house during the Underground Railroad became something negative, because they painted it with really red lips, thick red lips, and a really, really dark face. So all these projections have prevailed, really, in altering the direction and thoughts of those who should have been embracing it until now. And our refusal to embrace that wokeness is something negative is having a strong bearing on what they say wokeness is. For example, if we had embraced embraced wokeness as being a reality of something negative, then there would not have been a push to understand the history of the African. The wokeness says that it should be shut down, but because you say that's wokeness and we don't accept that, there is a huge push now for those who they're supposed to be kept from, are searching to understand it. And one person in particular is a young lady who history major at College of Charleston, Caucasian young lady, and in her research, she found uncovered the largest sale of enslaved people at one time was 600. Up to that point, it was thought to be 276 in Savannah, but it was in Charleston, 600 plus really. And then, in addition to that, she named and did an essay on the people who were involved and how that wealth is still there in Charleston in the hands of the people who were engaged in that sale as well as the purchase of. So wokeness is actually awakening those who have been asleep. And that's why it's so very important that we see, as Barbara said, that this wokeness is a reality for us and is actually a tool of sleep for those who refuse to accept the reality of where we are and to refuse to accept the authority of our Creator granting humanity the power of unicity with it, as opposed to unicity based on race. Thank you.
Yes, and listening to you talking, Barbara, open that up and talk about it. You remind me of some scripture, and we see all the time that the scriptures come into life in everyday things that we see, and the scripture you remind me of is, and I have no idea where it is, and might be in Matthew where it says, if the devil had known what he's doing, he wouldn't have put Jesus on the cross, or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly. And the things that people talk about now, and the things that they try to tear down and make into something negative or something that has no power, energy, they give energy to it by speaking it and keeping it in the forefront, and they don't even realize it. So it's just funny that I think about that when every time I hear DeSantis talk about it. He has no idea what he's doing. So, but thank you. We are the other day. Let me just say this about Monday. One of the things that fascinated me about Monday night and got me excited. I had been looking at, every now and then we'll discuss something, and we stay in Genesis. There are things we'll talk about in Genesis, and then I'll think about it some more, and I'm like, okay, it's still something else. There's still something else I don't see. It'll just kind of see the light under the surface, and I can't help but try to dig it out. And I was looking at the Sabbath and rest and the seventh and all that, and trying to figure out, like, there's something else there that we hadn't seen yet, and trying to tie that together. And then start looking at Noah. Noah meant seventh, and I mean Noah meant rest, and so, okay, what is all that we talked about this, and then at the time I didn't know Pastor was looking at chapter 17 of John, and lo and behold, when he opened that up, he tied all of those scriptures together. He brought rest to the forefront and showed me the answer that I was seeking. And even today, I listened to what Barbara said, and she went into it, and so that has me, just the information there, the light that came out of those three verses to me was just absolutely amazing. We have been on the line though about an hour or so, and or right at an hour, because we did get started a little late. Do you guys want to pause here and start tomorrow morning and see tomorrow morning if we have questions? If we have questions, of course, we still may not get to it, but do you want to kind of put a pin in it for right now? Because I think it may take us a little bit to get into John. Would that be okay with you, or would you like to continue, is what I'm asking. Anybody? No opinion?
This is Charles. It's okay with me.
Okay with me? If we're-
Okay.
Can I just offer just something out of the blue? If,
Yes, ma'am, of course.
since we're gonna continue this discussion tomorrow. I don't know if anybody saw this, but in the newsfeed, I saw where this company called Olive Aeronautics is approval to start to start using its car, its electric vehicle, which runs like a car on the road and flies also in the air. It can vertically ascend. They've been working on it, and it's already, the prototype is already done and tested. And so FAA has approved it. I thought several things with it being grounded, having the ability to be grounded and run on pavement, at the same time having the ability to levitate, to rise up, to ascend, and to fly. And the company name, which is Allah, which is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So it's just, I don't know, it may not mean anything, but I just thought all of the conjunction of all of those things was very interesting.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
I don't expect
Yeah.
observation.
I think those types of things that feel like the future will become more commonplace as we make this transition, because honestly, we should have been technologically at a place that's much more advanced than we are now, I believe, were it not for essentially the greed and desire for control that the masters of modern capitalism have exerted over the planet. That said, flying car, very cool idea. In theory, very bad idea in practice for most people.
Think about that. Talk about congestion here. It's what kind of congestion and how do they keep up with it in the traffic? Where the signs are. And lift up and go.
I'm sure they're advertising it for rich people. If that is ever going to be a thing, you can avoid traffic, but
Miles, and that's not much.
Yeah.
But none of this stuff is new because y'all remember, people my age or older, y'all remember that cartoon called The Jetsons?
Yeah.
How they talked about all of this stuff. So this is nothing new.
I'm waiting for the suitcase car. That's what I want.
Yeah, I remember that one on there too. Yeah. So none of this is new, but
do you all know when the first electric car was made? In the 1800s was the first electric car. The late 1800s.
like Elon Musk bringing this stuff back up because I think already he's an alien and
He's just autistic.
guy is an alien and he bringing all this stuff. He resurfing all this stuff. Yes, he even looked like one.
I'm not looking for a car. I'm not waiting for an electric car that can move vertical. I'm actually waiting for the period when I can move as Jesus did. I don't need a car.
Mm-hmm.
You could be there in the next instant.
Well, yeah, you don't have to buy tires or
Oil,
yeah, you know,
none of that stuff.
gas or any of that. That's
Taxes.
good. Yeah.
All that, and this is something I believe very strongly, that sort of looking towards the future thing that we see in science fiction, or like you say, the Jetsons, Evelyn and stuff, is a collective it's something coming out of our collective unconscious. It is an awareness that that is a more, depending on how we do it, harmonious or balanced way of living, as that way of living is aided by technological advancement. Essentially, we've been in many ways robbed of that because of the forces of selfishness, as they were, dominating the way we have evolved over so long. And that's truly in the realm of sort of social, political, and technological advancement. But Elon Musk is very much a part of the new wave, even though he personally, whatever, but like whether he is aware of it or not, and I think he actually might be to some extent, but he is part of the resurgence or the re-emerging of that sort of true technological destiny of humanity, which should have been in place decades and decades and decades ago, were it not for our insanity, essentially. But all that is just the outer expression of the spiritual destiny, which is, as Pastor Richard says, moving to the place where you don't need any sort of physical technology to do anything you want to do. But anyway, that is part of what is destined to occur in the move to the age of Aquarius, is rapid technological advancement. And it's not that it hasn't been changing over the last 100 years or so, it is that it has been purposefully held back and purposefully guided along a particular path that is favorable to essentially capitalist profit accumulation. Has nothing to do with anything that is beneficial to humanity or anything like that, and has nothing to do with the true possibilities that there are with what we can do, even on a physical, technological level. And there is a correlation between your sort of technology and your spiritual development. And it is that essentially all technology does is allow you to live easier, to do things easier. And when you have more free time, you have more time for introspection, essentially, to discover yourself. And that is on a more cosmic level across the entire universe, the sort of general trend of moving from being more connected to nature to being more, quote, modern, a more, quote, modern civilization, to eventually being basically Star Trek. Now, that whole transition period of the move away from being connected more closely to nature to being Star Trek is the danger zone, which we are in and are moving out of gradually. Because in that transition away from your connection to nature, you are transitioning away from that sort of natural foundational recognition of spirit and into a whole realm of possibilities that you might not be mature enough to deal with. And in the case where you're not mature enough to deal with it, it leads to self-destruction. However, as I've always said, we come close, but I believe we make it. So we are learning to be mature with our technological capability as we reawaken to the foundational spiritual nature of reality itself, which will happen gradually, but more quickly as we move through this transition. But that is the destiny of all beings in the universe. This pattern is something that I believe that it is our time to go through collectively on a global scale, essentially, since we're connected globally now, physically. We've always been connected spiritually, but as I said, as we move away from that natural connection into this sort of transitionary period, that's where the potential to become confused is greatest. Anyway, this is the destiny of any civilization as it exists anywhere in the universe is to move through the exact same pattern. And underlying all of it is the spiritual trajectory of moving back towards the recognition of, the realization of, all things are connected. All things are at their source one and the same. Well, maybe one, but not necessarily the same. It's maybe a better way to describe that at this point. And moving towards that sort of, if you can think of whatever you imagine when you imagine like a highly advanced, peaceful Star Trek-like civilization, moving towards that is very much in our DNA, in our blueprint for the spiritual evolution of humanity. The path towards that is not always guaranteed, of course, but that is the reason that we like imagining that we have always imagined that, back towards the Jetsons and even before, long before. And I could keep going all day about this, but like that is why essentially capitalism cannot be it cannot be, in at least in its current form, it cannot be the foundation for any of that, and it's incompatible with that, because you cannot have technology that eliminates the need. You cannot have technology that essentially eliminates scarcity and have capitalism exist at the same time. Of that, the entire basis of capitalism is on enforced scarcity. And that's why the masters of that selfish economic system will never allow the sort of true human advancement that needs to take place. That it is going to happen, but not while they're around.
Well, we're here for to disrupt their thinking and their
Correct.
activities.
Yes, absolutely. And that is why there is so much fear mongering about things like communism and socialism. And as we said earlier, they're theories. Nobody has a perfect implementation of that theory anywhere. But when they bring up examples of, let's say, Soviet Russia as an example of why communism is evil, there's very little difference between Nazi Germany and the height of authoritarianism in Soviet Russia. The words on the paper mean nothing. When you call yourself communist, it doesn't matter. They did the same thing that American capitalists do, which is hoard wealth and resources, and it caused destruction of, everything beneath, quote unquote, them within the hierarchy they developed. And it doesn't matter what you call yourself, all of that is the same thing. It is a oligarchy designed to suck resources from the masses into a very, very small pool of people. And nowhere in the description of communism or socialism do you see a model like that. So there's a lot of confusion and a lot of cognitive dissonance in the way that these things are thought of and play out. But the point of everything I'm saying is that Star Trek is socialist and communist. That is our destiny, essentially, I believe, to actually implement something along those lines. But it requires, on an individual and collective level, to let go of our egotistical and selfish desire to place ourselves above another person or a group of people. That is essentially the mentality that is incompatible with the true human destiny and advancement that we could have were we more collectively harmonious and on the same page about what we want to do. And that is that desire to place yourself above other people and sort of extract for yourself as much as you can. That is the sort of mentality that is the basis for capitalism. Anyway,
Good discussion.
thank
Yeah,
I have a question
thank you.
from Pastor and family. Pastor, are you seeing anywhere with your eye that you can have a all-nighter, overnighter?
I feel it, but at the time, I don't see it yet. And I might not be the one to see it. It may be very well be, one of you guys, but it has to be seen with the eye and not with the mental desire. And mental desire, but with the eye. So if you see it, let me know. We'll go from there. If I do, I'll let you guys know. I think at some point I want to talk about what it really means to see with this mental eye versus the spiritual eye. Because I think that was very evident with Jesus being in the wilderness and the three, what we call the temptations that he had. Anyway, I know that's not what you're talking about, Evelyn, but I don't see it yet. Okay? Bye. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Okay, guys, if you don't mind, it's about looks like about 11:18 according to my my phone here. So why don't we start off fresh tomorrow? This will be a good pause in place, and see if we have any questions or comments and on what we've discussed today, and then we'll kind of do a recap on John if not, and go into that tomorrow. Would that be okay?
On what?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
John 17, excuse me. John 17, we did the first 3 verses Monday night. So we'll just start there and see where we go.
Okay.
Okay. Great discussion today, though.
Sunday we be on with California.
Yes, sir. You guys hear, Pastor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Have a good week.
Thank you.